The doors to the Grand Council chamber opened with a sound like thunder. Marcus Webb stepped through, and for a moment he forgot to breathe. The chamber was not a room. It was a world unto itself. The ceiling arched so high above him that clouds formed in the upper reaches. The walls curved away in all directions, lined with thousands of platforms where alien representatives sat in judgment. Marcus walked forward, his footsteps echoing on the polished floor that seemed to be made of compressed starlight. He was alone. Earth had sent one man to face the combined power of galactic civilization. Behind him, the massive doors sealed shut with a finality that made his stomach tighten. High Arbiter Velanoth occupied a throne that floated at the chamber's center. Suspended by forces Marcus could not see or understand, the Arbiter's crystalline body caught the light from 1,000 sources and scattered it in patterns that hurt to look at directly. When Velanoth spoke, his voice filled the entire chamber, resonating in frequencies that made Marcus's bones vibrate. Human, you stand accused of crimes against the galactic order. Your species has violated the sacred laws that have governed civilized space for 70,000 years. Speak now if you have any defense to offer before sentence is pronounced. Marcus looked up at the thousands of alien faces watching him. Some had eyes. Others had sensory organs he could not identify. All of them radiated hostility or curiosity or cold calculation. He was a specimen, an oddity, a problem to be solved or eliminated. He took a breath and spoke clearly. I have no defense to offer because Earth has committed no crime. We refuse to recognize laws we had no part in creating. The chamber erupted. The sound was indescribable. Roars and clicks and subsonic rumbles and frequencies that made Marcus's teeth ache. Velanoth raised one crystalline hand, and silence fell like a physical weight. You dare to reject the authority of this council? I dare to state the obvious truth, Marcus replied. The Preservation Accords were written 14,000 years ago by 12 species who claimed the best territories for themselves and locked everyone else out. You call it law. We call it theft dressed in legal language. A massive creature rose from one of the lower platforms. It had 6 legs, 4 arms, and a head that resembled a hammer. When it spoke, the translator in Marcus's ear struggled to render the words into something comprehensible. Your species achieved spaceflight 90 years ago, 90. We have been traveling between stars for 12,000 years. You are children playing with fire, and you need to be controlled before you burn down the galaxy. Marcus turned to face the creature directly. Children learn by making mistakes, but they also learn by being given freedom to grow. You want to keep humanity in a playpen forever, calling it protection when it is really just convenient for you. Convenient? The creature's voice rose to a roar. You have established colonies in restricted zones. You have mined asteroids and systems designated as sacred sites. You have sent exploration vessels across boundaries that were established to prevent conflict. Your recklessness threatens the stability we have maintained for millennia. Your stability, Marcus corrected, not ours. You maintain order by ensuring that late-arriving species like humanity are trapped in the scraps you left unclaimed. You preserve peace by making sure no one can challenge your control. That is not justice. That is tyranny with better marketing. Velanoth's crystalline form darkened, the light refracting through him taking on sharper, more dangerous angles. You speak boldly for someone who stands alone before the combined might of 247 civilizations. Earth commands perhaps 200 warships. The Council's fleets number in the hundreds of thousands. Your entire population is 15 billion. The species represented here account for 47 trillion sentient beings. What possible leverage could you have? Marcus reached into his jacket and withdrew a small data crystal. He held it up so the light caught it, making it sparkle like a tiny star. This contains information that will change how you see humanity. Information we have kept hidden since first contact. Information about what happened the last time someone tried to cage us. Threats? Velanoth asked. You come here making threats? I come here offering context, Marcus replied. Earth has a history that your researchers somehow missed. A history that explains why attempting to contain us is a very, very bad idea. He pressed a button on the crystal, and a holographic image appeared above him, visible to everyone in the chamber. It showed ruins, ancient structures that clearly were not human in origin, half buried in Earth's deserts and jungles and ocean floors, 12,000 years ago. Another species visited Earth. We call them the predecessors. They were advanced, powerful, and convinced that primitive humans needed guidance and control. They established observation posts across our planet. They monitored our development. They tried to shape our evolution. Marcus paused. Then they made the mistake of trying to limit us. They decided humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to grow unchecked. They attempted containment. The chamber had gone silent. Every eye and sensor was locked on the holographic images cycling above Marcus's head. Weapons, technology fragments, evidence of orbital platforms that had crashed into Earth's oceans, and bones. Alien bones scattered across 4 continents. The predecessors numbered in the tens of thousands on Earth. They had advanced weapons, orbital support, and technology that seemed like magic to Stone Age humans. They should have been able to control us easily. Marcus looked around the chamber, meeting as many alien gazes as he could. Instead, they sent one final transmission to their homeworld. 3 words, do not provoke them. Then they went extinct. A new voice spoke from one of the upper platforms. This being looked almost human except for the 4 arms and skin that shimmered like oil on water. You expect us to believe that primitive humans destroyed an advanced civilization? I expect you to examine the evidence, Marcus replied. The data crystal contains genetic analysis showing modifications the predecessors made to early humans. Archaeological records of their facilities on Earth recovered technology that does not match any human civilization. And most importantly, correlation between their metallurgy and samples taken from the silent expanse. Velenoth's entire body went still. The silent expanse? 70 star systems, all showing signs of advanced civilization. All abandoned roughly 12,000 years ago. All containing monuments and ruins but no living inhabitants. Marcus let that sink in. Your historians call it one of the galaxy's great mysteries. What happened to the thriving civilization that once occupied that region? Where did they go? Why did they leave behind everything they built? He pointed at the holographic images. They came to Earth, they tried to control humanity. And when we refused to be controlled, when we fought back with stolen weapons and desperate courage, they realized they had awakened something they could not contain. So they ran. They abandoned Earth, struck us from their records, and retreated to their home territories. And there, weakened by the loss of their pioneering spirit, paranoid about what might follow them from Earth, their civilization tore itself apart over the next 3,000 years. This is speculation, the hammer-headed creature protested. But its voice lacked conviction. It is the only explanation that fits the evidence, Marcus countered. And more importantly, it is a warning. The predecessors underestimated humanity because we were primitive. They paid for that mistake with their civilization. You are underestimating humanity because we are young. I wonder if you will be wiser than they were. Velenoth descended from his floating throne, his crystalline body refracting light in increasingly agitated patterns as he moved closer to Marcus. You claim your species destroyed the predecessors. Even if true, that was 12,000 years ago. You were savages with stolen technology. What could modern humanity possibly do that would make us hesitate? Marcus smiled, and there was no warmth in it. We could show you what we have built in the 90 years since we achieved spaceflight. We could demonstrate the weapons we have developed specifically for fighting opponents with superior technology. We could prove that humanity has spent 3 decades preparing for this exact confrontation, because we knew from the moment we discovered we were not alone that other species would try to limit us. He paused. Or you could examine the data crystal, verify our claims about the predecessors, and ask yourself if you really want to learn firsthand why their final message was a warning not to provoke humanity. The chamber erupted again, but this time the tone was different. Not outrage, uncertainty, fear, species that had been demanding humanity's submission were now consulting urgently with advisors and military commanders. The political calculations that had seemed simple moments ago were suddenly far more complex. Marcus stood alone on the floor of the Grand Council chamber, surrounded by species that could crush Earth with ease if they chose. But for the first time since entering this place, he allowed himself to hope. They were listening. They were uncertain. And uncertainty was a weapon humanity knew how to use. High Arbiter Velenov stared at the human for a long moment, then spoke words that changed everything. The Council will adjourn to examine this evidence. Ambassador Webb, you will remain in our custody until a decision is reached. I expected nothing less, Marcus replied. But know this, High Arbiter. Earth is watching. If I do not return safely, if this council attempts to suppress the truth, then humanity will assume the worst. And we will act accordingly. Is that a threat? It is a promise, Marcus said quietly. We will not be caged. Not by you. Not by anyone. Learn from the predecessor's mistake or repeat it. The choice has always been yours. 3 days passed before Marcus saw the council chamber again. They kept him in quarters that were luxurious by any standard, with food synthesizers that could produce almost anything he requested and windows that showed a view of the massive space station, rotating slowly against a backdrop of unfamiliar stars. But the doors would not open for him. An armed guard stood watch outside at all hours. He was a prisoner in everything but name. On the morning of the 4th day, the doors opened. 2 guards entered, neither of them human in shape or form. One resembled a suit of living metal. The other was something like a giant bird with scales instead of feathers. They gestured for Marcus to follow. The walk through the station's corridors took nearly an hour. Marcus saw species he had never encountered, technologies he could barely comprehend, and glimpses of the vast infrastructure that supported galactic civilization. The station was a city. No, it was larger than a city. It was a nation unto itself, housing millions of beings from hundreds of worlds. They brought him not to the Grand Council chamber, but to a smaller room. 20 beings sat around a circular table. Marcus recognized High Arbiter Velenov immediately. The others he could only guess at, though their positions at the table suggested they were high-ranking members of the Council's leadership. Velenov gestured to an empty chair that had clearly been added for Marcus. Sit, Ambassador. We have questions. Marcus sat, keeping his posture relaxed despite the tension he felt. These were not public proceedings. Whatever happened here would determine Earth's fate, but it would happen behind closed doors, away from the political theater of the main chamber. We have examined your evidence, Velenov began. Our scientists confirm that the ruins on Earth match the technological signature of sites in the Silent Expanse. The genetic modifications you showed are real. The timeline matches. And the final transmission you referenced has been found in our deepest archives, filed away and forgotten for 12,000 years. Marcus said nothing. He had expected this. Earth's researchers had been thorough. What we do not understand, Velenov continued, is how primitive humans could have defeated an advanced civilization. The predecessors had weapons that could level mountains. They had shields that could withstand nuclear detonations. They had orbital platforms capable of targeting individual humans from space. How did Stone Age tribals overcome such advantages? By being more willing to die than they were to live as slaves, Marcus replied. The predecessors made a fundamental error. They assumed that superior technology meant automatic victory. They forgot that desperation is a force multiplier. They forgot that when you trap an animal with nothing to lose, it becomes far more dangerous than when it was free. One of the other beings at the table spoke, its voice a series of clicks and whistles that Marcus's translator rendered into words. The records show that the predecessors lost 90% of their ground forces on Earth. Orbital platforms were boarded and captured. Their evacuation was chaotic and incomplete. This suggests a level of tactical sophistication that should have been impossible for pre-agricultural humans. Humans are good at learning, Marcus said simply. The predecessors left weapons lying around. We picked them up and figured out how to use them. They used predictable patrol patterns. We ambushed them. They centralized their command structure. We targeted their leaders. They thought in terms of conquest and occupation. We thought in terms of survival at any cost. You are describing asymmetric warfare, said another council member. This one resembling a mass of tentacles arranged around a central eye. Tactics that pre-technological species should not have been capable of conceptualizing. Unless humanity has always been better at war than you assumed, Marcus replied. The modifications the predecessors made to us were meant to create a species capable of complex thought and tool use. What they did not anticipate was that those modifications would also make us better at killing when necessary. They optimized us for learning and adaptation. Then they gave us reasons to learn how to fight. Velenoth's crystalline form shifted colors, moving from blue to red. The evidence suggests something more troubling. Analysis of the genetic modifications shows they are still active in modern humans. Most genetic engineering degrades over generations without maintenance. But the changes the predecessors made have been self-sustaining for 12,000 years. It is as if they designed you to be soldiers permanently. Perhaps they did, Marcus said. Or perhaps they simply underestimated how thoroughly their modifications would integrate with human biology. Either way, the result is the same. Every human alive today carries enhancements meant for combat and survival. We are not simply descendants of modified soldiers. We are the refined end product of that modification, with 12,000 years of evolution reinforcing what the predecessors started. The room fell silent. Marcus could see the council members exchanging glances or whatever passed for communication among their species. They were realizing something important, something that changed the nature of the threat they faced. Finally, Velenoth spoke again. We brought you here to discuss Earth's violations of the Preservation Accords. But it seems we need to discuss a more fundamental question. What does humanity want? That is simple, Marcus replied. We want what every species wants. Room to grow, resources to sustain our population, freedom to explore and expand without arbitrary restrictions, imposed by civilizations that claimed the best, territories millennia before. We even knew other worlds existed. If we allow unrestricted human expansion, you will come into conflict with established species. The Accords exist to prevent such conflicts. The Accords exist to preserve the status quo, Marcus corrected. They prevent conflict by ensuring that late-arriving species accept their subordinate position. But that only works if those species are willing to accept permanent second-class status. Humanity is not willing. One of the council members, a being that looked like living crystal similar to Velenoth but smaller and more angular, leaned forward. You understand what you are asking? If we grant Earth the concessions you demand, every other young species will demand the same. The entire structure of galactic governance will be threatened. Good, Marcus said bluntly. A structure that depends on keeping most species in poverty and restriction deserves to be threatened. Either the Council adapts to a more equitable system, or it will eventually be replaced by something better. You speak of revolution, Velenoth said, his voice sharp. I speak of evolution, Marcus replied. The galaxy is changing whether the Council wants it to or not. Humanity is just the most obvious example. There are dozens of younger species in the same position we are, all chafing under restrictions that benefit ancient civilizations at everyone else's expense. The question is whether the Council has the wisdom to adapt peacefully, or whether it will cling to power until someone takes it by force. Is that what Earth intends? Asked the tentacled being. To take power by force? Earth intends to survive and grow, Marcus said. If that can be accomplished through peaceful cooperation, excellent. If it requires conflict, we will not shy away from that either. The predecessors tried to stop us by force. We fought back and won. If the Council makes the same attempt, we will fight again. And while I cannot promise we would win against the combined might of galactic civilization, I can promise that the cost would be higher than anyone expects. You are threatening mutual destruction, Velanoth observed. I am stating tactical reality, Marcus corrected. Earth has spent 30 years preparing for the possibility that first contact would lead to conflict. We have developed weapons specifically designed to fight enemies with superior numbers and technology. We have established defensive positions that would be extremely costly to assault. We have created contingency plans for scenarios ranging from economic blockade to full military invasion. You can test those preparations if you wish, but I strongly advise against it. The council members conferred among themselves, their various methods of communication creating a bizarre symphony of sounds and lights and movements that Marcus found almost hypnotic. He waited, knowing that this moment would determine whether humanity would be accepted as equals or marked for elimination. Finally, Velanoth spoke. The council is divided. Some members believe Earth should be forcibly contained before you become a greater threat. Others believe that attempting such containment would be too costly, both in lives and in the destabilization it would cause. Still others believe that humanity might be valuable allies if properly integrated into galactic civilization. And what do you believe, High Arbiter? Marcus asked. Velanoth was silent for a long moment. I believe that the predecessors sent their warning for a reason. I believe that underestimating humanity would be a mistake of historical proportions. And I believe that the Council must find a way to coexist with your species, because the alternative is too terrible to contemplate. He gestured, and a holographic display appeared above the table. It showed star charts, territorial boundaries, and resource distributions across dozens of sectors. We are prepared to offer a compromise. Earth will be granted expanded territorial rights. The restrictions on human expansion will be eased significantly. In exchange, humanity will agree to limited oversight of its military development and will join the Council as a provisional member with partial voting rights. Marcus studied the star charts. The offered territories were better than what Earth currently held, but still far from equality. The oversight provisions would allow the Council to monitor and potentially limit human military capabilities. And partial voting rights meant humanity would have a voice but not real power. It was a cage with more room to move. But it was still a cage. No, Marcus said simply. The room froze. Every being at the table focused on him with sudden, sharp attention. No? Velanoth repeated. Earth will accept nothing less than full equality. Full territorial rights comparable to any other council member. No special oversight of our military beyond what applies to all species. Full voting rights without qualifications or probationary periods. Marcus met Velanoth's gaze steadily. You want to integrate humanity into your system? Fine, but we enter as equals or not at all. You are in no position to make demands, the tentacle being said, its voice sharp. I am in exactly that position, Marcus replied. Because you know what happens if you try to force us into submission. The predecessors learned that lesson. The question is whether you are wise enough to learn from their mistake or whether you need to repeat it. The meeting ended without resolution. Marcus was escorted back to his quarters where he spent 2 more days waiting while the Council debated humanity's fate. He used the time to send carefully encrypted messages back to Earth, reporting on everything that had happened and preparing his government for either breakthrough or catastrophe. On the 3rd day, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Marcus rushed to his window and saw something that made his heart stop. Ships, hundreds of them. The sleek, predatory shapes of Council warships all moving into formation around the station. His door opened. The same guards as before, but this time they looked agitated. Come quickly, one of them said through Marcus's translator. The Council is convening an emergency session. They ran through corridors filled with panicked beings. Marcus caught fragments of conversation as they passed. Something about human activity. Something about a fleet. Something about Earth doing the unthinkable. When they reached the Grand Council chamber, Marcus found it in chaos. Delegates were shouting, displays were showing tactical information, and at the center of it all, High Arbiter Velenoth stood in fury. "Ambassador Webb," he roared, his voice cutting through the noise. "Explain what your species has done." Marcus looked at the tactical displays and felt his blood run cold. There, at the edge of Earth's home system, a massive fleet of human warships had just appeared. Not the 200 ships the Council thought Earth possessed. 2,000 ships? An order of magnitude more than anyone had suspected humanity could field, and they were in attack formation. "Explain this," Velenoth demanded. "You come here speaking of peace and cooperation while Earth masses a fleet larger than anything we anticipated. Is this how humanity negotiates? With threats of violence?" Marcus stared at the display, his mind racing. This was not the plan. Earth was supposed to wait for his signal before taking any military action. Something had changed. Something had forced Earth's hand, then he saw it. In the corner of one display, partially obscured, was information about a Council fleet movement. Ships heading toward Earth's colonies. Not the home system itself, but the outlying settlements where Earth's population was most vulnerable. "You tried to take our colonies?" Marcus said quietly, understanding flooding through him. "While I was here negotiating, you sent fleets to seize our outlying settlements as leverage." "The Council voted to take protective custody of human territories," Velenoth said, not denying it, "to ensure cooperation and prevent reckless actions. It was a peacekeeping measure." "It was an act of war," Marcus replied, his voice sharp. "You tried to hold our children hostage while pretending to negotiate in good faith." Earth responded the only way possible. "By showing you that we are not as weak as you assumed, and that any attack on our colonies would be met with overwhelming force." 2,000 warships, the hammer-headed delegate said, its voice tight. "You lied to us about your military capabilities." "We let you believe what you wanted to believe," Marcus corrected. "You saw 200 ships in active deployment and assumed that was our full strength. You never asked about our reserve fleets, our construction capacity, or our strategic planning. You made assumptions, and Earth allowed those assumptions to persist." Velenoth's crystalline body was cycling through colors rapidly now, a sign of extreme agitation. "If those ships attack, it will trigger a war that will consume millions of lives." "Then call back your fleets from our colonies," Marcus said. "Order them to withdraw immediately, and Earth will stand down. Prove that the Council can negotiate in good faith, and humanity will respond in kind." "You are not in a position to dictate terms," Velenoth began. But Marcus cut him off. "I am in exactly that position because Earth's fleet is not the only thing you should be worried about." He pulled out another data crystal. This one marked with symbols that made several delegates gasp in recognition. "While you were debating whether to accept our demands or eliminate us as a threat, Earth's intelligence services were gathering information about the Council's inner workings." He activated the crystal, and new holographic displays filled the chamber. Communications intercepts, financial records, evidence of corruption, of species buying votes, of Council members enriching themselves while claiming to serve the greater good. Secrets that dozens of civilizations had worked hard to keep hidden. "We know everything," Marcus said quietly. "Every backroom deal. Every illegal agreement. Every species that has violated the same preservation accords you wanted to punish Earth for breaking. We have been watching you as carefully as you have been watching us. And if this situation escalates to violence, all of this information will be released publicly across every communication network in the galaxy." The chamber fell into shocked silence. This was more than a military threat. This was exposure, disgrace, the complete unraveling of the political structures that held the Council together. "You would destroy galactic civilization to save yourselves," Velenoth said. And for the first time, Marcus heard something like fear in his voice. "We would do whatever necessary to ensure our survival," Marcus replied. "Just as the predecessors discovered 12,000 years ago. You can choose cooperation and everyone benefits, or you can choose conflict and everyone loses. But you cannot choose to cage humanity without paying a price higher than you can imagine." He gestured at the tactical displays showing Earth's fleet. Those ships are not there to attack. They are there to defend. Earth has no interest in conquering the galaxy or destroying the Council. But we will not accept subordination. We will not allow our colonies to be seized. And we will not be bullied into accepting restrictions that serve everyone's interests except our own. Marcus took a breath and delivered the ultimatum he had been authorized to make. Earth proposes a new framework. Full membership in the Council with equal rights and responsibilities. Recognition of humanity's territorial claims in disputed regions. An end to special restrictions on human activity beyond what applies to all species. And in exchange, Earth will share the military technology you see displayed in our fleet. We will cooperate in maintaining galactic security. We will work within the Council's structures rather than outside them. And if we refuse? Asked the tentacled being. Then Earth withdraws from Council space entirely. We take our colonies, our technology, and our knowledge of your secrets, and we establish ourselves as an independent power. You will have an unpredictable human civilization on your borders, armed with weapons you do not fully understand, motivated by grievances you created, and absolutely determined to survive no matter the cost. Marcus looked around the chamber. Is that really what you want? Another species pushed into desperate opposition? Another enemy forged by your attempts at control? Velanoth stared at Marcus for a long moment. Then, slowly, he turned to face the assembled delegates. The Council will vote on Earth's proposal. Full mem. Earthship, equal rights. No special restrictions. All in favor? The vote was not unanimous. 57 species voted against, unable or unwilling to accept the fundamental change humanity demanded. But 190 voted in favor, calculating that adaptation was preferable to the chaos Marcus had threatened. The measure passes, Velanoth announced. Humanity is granted full membership in the Galactic Council. Ambassador Webb, welcome to Galactic Civilization. I hope you prove worthy of the trust we are placing in you. We will, Marcus said. And in time, you will see that bringing humanity in as equals was far wiser than trying to keep us out. As the council session ended and delegates began the complex process of implementing humanity's integration, Marcus allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Earth had gambled everything on this confrontation, and humanity had won. The aftermath of Earth's admission to the council moved faster than anyone expected. Within 3 weeks, human delegations arrived at the council station to begin the integration process. Within 2 months, human ships were participating in joint patrols with council forces. Within 6 months, Earth had opened diplomatic embassies on 43 worlds and begun technology exchange programs with 17 species, but not everyone was happy about humanity's rapid rise. The Corthan Dominion had been among the 57 species that voted against Earth's membership. They were an old power, one of the 12 founding members of the Preservation Accords, and they viewed humanity's admission as a dangerous precedent. If humans could force their way to equal status through threats and blackmail, what would stop every other young species from trying the same approach? 6 months after Marcus's confrontation with the Council, the Corthan made their move. Admiral Rita Torres sat in Earth Defense Command, 3 kilometers beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching tactical displays that showed something that should not have been possible. A Corthan fleet of 400 warships had just entered Earth's home system without authorization or warning. Status? She demanded, her voice sharp. They are holding position at the heliopause, her tactical officer reported. Weapons are hot, but they have not locked targeting solutions. They appear to be waiting for something. Communications? Incoming transmission now. The main display showed a Corthan commander, its 6-limbed body clad in ceremonial armor. When it spoke, the translation was immediate and clear. I am Fleet Admiral Cross of the Corthan Third Fleet. We are here to conduct a compliance inspection of Earth's military installations. The Council has granted us authority to ensure that humanity is adhering to the agreed standards for fleet composition and weapons deployment. You will allow our inspection teams to board your defensive stations and examine your shipyards. Torres felt cold fury wash through her. This was not an inspection. This was intimidation. The Corthan were testing whether Earth would actually defend itself against Council authority or whether the threats Marcus had made were empty bluster. Negative, she replied. Earth has accepted no inspection protocols beyond what apply to all Council members. Your presence in our home system without invitation is a violation of our territorial sovereignty. You will withdraw immediately or be treated as hostile forces. Cross's expression did not change. You cannot be serious. We have 400 capital ships. Your home defense fleet numbers perhaps 70 vessels. If you resist, we will interpret that as a hostile act and respond with appropriate force. Torres smiled, and there was no warmth in it. Admiral Cross, let me educate you about something. Earth does not bluff. When we make threats, we follow through. When we make promises, we keep them. And when we defend our territory, we do not care about the odds. She gestured to her tactical officer, who initiated a command sequence that had been prepared for exactly this scenario. Throughout Earth's solar system, silent contacts began appearing on the Corthan fleet's sensors. Ships that had been drifting dark, powered down to the point of being nearly invisible, suddenly came to life. You are now detecting 3,200 strike craft surrounding your fleet, Torres said calmly. They have been waiting here for 6 days, monitoring your approach, calculating firing solutions. Each one carries an antimatter warhead capable of destroying a capital ship if detonated at close range. Each one is piloted by volunteers who have already said goodbye to their families. She watched Cross's expression change as his tactical officers confirmed what his sensors were showing. The Corthan fleet was surrounded by suicide drones, each one a potential ship killer, deployed in numbers that made defense nearly impossible. This is madness, Cross said. You would sacrifice 3,000 pilots? To defend Earth? Torres replied. Absolutely. But more importantly, Admiral, those pilots would not die alone. Analysis shows that your fleet could destroy perhaps 2/3 of our strike craft before they close to detonation range. That means roughly 1,000 warheads would reach your ships. 1,000 antimatter detonations at close range. Even with your shields and armor, survival calculations are not favorable. She leaned forward. So here is what happens next. You will withdraw beyond the heliopause immediately. You will report to the Council that Earth's defenses are adequate and that no inspection is necessary. And you will never again enter human space without explicit invitation. Or I will order my pilots to attack, and we will all learn together exactly how costly it is to provoke humanity. Cross stared at her through the communication link. She could see the calculations running behind his eyes. Military commanders were trained to assess odds, to weigh costs against benefits, to know when to press an advantage and when to retreat. You are bluffing, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Torres gestured again, and 12 of the human strike craft broke formation and accelerated toward a Corthan destroyer on the formation's edge. Weapons free on target Valiant 9. Fire for effect. The destroyer's point defense systems tracked the incoming craft and destroyed 3 of them before they reached detonation range. The remaining 9 closed to 500 meters from the destroyer's hull dot, and then they exploded. The tactical display showed a cascading energy release that turned a significant portion of space white for several seconds. When the glare faded, the destroyer was gone. Not damaged, not crippled, gone, debris scattered across hundreds of thousands of kilometers. The metal still glowing from temperatures that had briefly matched the heart of a star. I gave that ship's crew 14 seconds to evacuate after my pilots fired, Torres said quietly. Their captain chose to fight instead of launching escape pods. That death is on him, not on me. But let me be absolutely clear, Admiral Cross, I am not bluffing. I have 3,000 pilots ready to die to protect Earth. Your fleet has 400 ships. Do the mathematics. The Corthan fleet began withdrawing immediately. Ships breaking formation and accelerating toward the heliopause with all possible speed. No additional shots were fired. No further threats were made. Within an hour, The Third Fleet had retreated beyond Earth's claimed space and initiated faster than light travel. Torres sat back in her command chair, allowing herself to breathe normally for the first time since the crisis began. Around her, the command center erupted in cheers. Earth had faced down a council fleet and won without losing a single human life beyond the 9 volunteers who had forced the demonstration. But Torres knew this was not over. The Corthan would report what happened here. The council would convene emergency sessions, and humanity's position would become even more precarious as species realized that Earth was serious about defending itself with whatever force proved necessary. She opened a communication link to Marcus Webb, who was still stationed at the council headquarters. "Marcus, you need to see this. The Corthan just tested us. We passed the test. But there will be consequences." Marcus's response came immediately. "I know, the entire council is in emergency session right now. Some delegates are calling for immediate military action against Earth, others are arguing for acceptance. And a few are beginning to realize something important." "What is that?" "That humanity has changed the rules of galactic civilization. We have proven that late-arriving species do not have to accept subordinate positions. We have demonstrated that determination and tactical innovation can offset technological advantages. And we have shown that the Council's authority is not absolute." Marcus paused. "The galaxy will never be quite the same again." Torres considered that. "Is that good or bad?" "That depends on what we do next," Marcus replied. "But at least now we have the freedom to find out." 1 year after Earth's admission to the Galactic Council, Marcus Webb stood once again in the Grand Council chamber. But this time he was not alone on the floor. He was not a defendant. He was a full member, standing among equals to address the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. The year had been turbulent. 3 species had withdrawn from the Council entirely, refusing to accept humanity's equal status. 7 others had demanded similar treatment, using Earth's example to argue for expanded rights and territories. The careful political balance that had maintained stability for millennia was crumbling, replaced by something new and uncertain, and Marcus was about to accelerate that transformation. "Distinguished representatives," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "I come before you today to propose an initiative that will fundamentally change the nature of galactic civilization. An initiative that Earth has been developing in secret for 3 decades. An initiative that we are now prepared to share with all Council members who meet specific criteria." High Arbiter Velanov, who had become something like an ally in the months since Earth's admission, leaned forward with interest. "What initiative?" Marcus pressed a control, and holographic displays filled the chamber. They showed a massive ring-like structure, 40 meters in diameter, suspended in a chamber on Mars. "This is what we call a gateway. It creates a stable wormhole connection between 2 points in space, allowing instantaneous transit regardless of distance. Earth currently maintains operational gateways linking all of our colonies and major installations. Travel time between any 2 points in human space is now effectively 0. The chamber erupted. The implications were immediate and staggering. Faster-than-light travel took weeks or months between distant systems. Communication relays required hours or days to transmit information. The sheer scale of space created natural buffers that enabled the Council's governance structure. But if distance could be eliminated entirely, everything changed. "You possess instant travel across any distance?" Velanov asked, his crystalline form cycling through colors rapidly. "And you have kept this secret for how long?" "Gateway technology reached operational status 7 months before I made first contact with the Council," Marcus replied. "We kept it classified because we needed leverage. We needed something valuable enough that the Council would be forced to treat us as equals rather than as primitives to be. Managed, you held back your most significant technological achievement," the hammer-headed delegate accused. "You allowed us to underestimate you deliberately." "Yes," Marcus said simply, "because we knew that showing weakness would invite domination. So we appeared weak while preparing strength. We let you believe we were limited to slower-than-light communication and conventional travel while we built a network that makes your infrastructure obsolete. One of the newer council members, representing a species that had joined only 2 centuries before, stood excitedly. Will you share this technology? What are the requirements? Earth is prepared to establish a gateway exchange program with any species or government that meets 3 conditions, Marcus explained. First, recognition of humanity's complete sovereignty and territorial rights. Second, commitment to peaceful cooperation and mutual defense. Third, acceptance of a new framework for galactic governance that does not privilege old civilizations over young ones. You are demanding we restructure the entire council, Velanoth observed. We are offering a partnership that benefits everyone, Marcus corrected. The old system maintained stability by ensuring young species accepted subordinate positions. That system is failing. Earth has proven that young species will not accept permanent inferiority. Other civilizations are beginning to follow our example. You can either adapt to this new reality or watch the council fracture as more species demand equality. And gateway technology is your incentive for cooperation, the tentacle delegate said. Understanding dawning. You are bribing us to accept a new order. We are offering a technological revolution that will benefit everyone who participates, Marcus replied. Imagine a galaxy where distance no longer limits communication or travel, where fleets can respond to emergencies instantly, where trade no longer requires weeks in transit, where every world in the network is effectively next door to every other world. He gestured at the holographic gateways. Earth has already begun sharing this technology with our closest allies. The Vrin Compact now has operational gateways linking their 3 core systems. The Stellar Confederacy is constructing their first gateway with our assistance. In 5 years, we expect to have 50 species integrated into the network. In 20 years, perhaps the entire council. Unless, of course, you would prefer to cling to the old system and watch from the outside while everyone else moves forward. The chamber dissolved into chaotic discussion as delegates realized what Marcus was offering. This was not just technology. This was a complete transformation of galactic civilization's fundamental structure. And Earth, the young species that had been viewed as a problem just 1 year ago, was now positioned as the architect of that transformation. Velanoth called for order, his voice cutting through the noise. Ambassador Webb, the council will need time to evaluate your proposal, but I suspect you know that many species will accept your terms. The advantages are too significant to refuse. I expected nothing less, Marcus replied. Earth is patient. We have waited 30 years to reach this point. We can wait a bit longer while you make your decisions. But know this, High Arbiter. The galaxy is changing whether the Council wants it to or not. You can lead that change, guide it, shape it into something beneficial for everyone. Or you can resist it and become irrelevant as the new order builds around you. Over the following months, species began accepting Earth's terms one by one. First the Vrin Compact, already committed to the partnership, then the Stellar Confederacy and the Keltheran Empire. Smaller powers followed, recognizing that gateway access would level the playing field against ancient civilizations that had dominated through infrastructure advantages. Even the Korthan Dominion eventually capitulated, though they did so with extreme reluctance. Admiral Cross, who had tested Earth's defenses a year earlier, became one of the first Korthan commanders to visit a human gateway facility. Marcus was present for that visit, and the 2 former adversaries spoke privately after the tour. You planned this from the beginning, Cross said. The confrontation with the Council, the military demonstration, the threats and negotiations, all of it was designed to position Earth as indispensable. We planned to survive, Marcus corrected. Everything else followed from that goal. We knew that appearing weak would invite domination and that appearing too strong would invite preemptive elimination. So we calibrated our strength carefully, revealing just enough at each stage to avoid both extremes. The predecessors did not underestimate primitive humans, Cross said quietly. They underestimated human capacity for long-term strategic thinking. You are not just survivors. You are planners, schemers, a species that thinks in generations rather than years. Perhaps, Marcus agreed. Or perhaps we simply learned the right lessons from our history. The predecessors tried to cage us. We destroyed them. The Council tried to limit us. We forced you to accept us as equals. Anyone else who tries to contain humanity in the future will learn the same lesson. He paused. But we would prefer not to teach that lesson again. We would rather build than destroy. Create than fight. Cooperate than compete. As long as cooperation happens on your terms, Cross observed. As long as cooperation treats us fairly, Marcus corrected. That is all we ever wanted. Equality, opportunity, the freedom to grow without artificial restrictions. The Council can provide that, or Earth will continue to build alternatives until you become irrelevant. The choice has always been yours. 50 years after the Gateway Revelation, as historians began calling it, Marcus Webb retired from diplomatic service. He returned to Earth, to a quiet home overlooking the Pacific Ocean, where he spent his remaining years writing memoirs that became required reading at every diplomatic academy in the galaxy. The Gateway Network had expanded to include 212 species by then. Trade flourished. Conflicts that once simmered for decades now resolved in weeks because ships could respond instantly to emerging crises. Medical advances, scientific cooperation, and cultural exchange reached unprecedented levels, but humanity never forgot the lessons, encoded in its long struggle for recognition. Every human child learned about the predecessors and the Galactic Council's initial attempts at containment. They learned about Marcus Webb's confrontation in the Grand Council chamber. They learned about Admiral Torres's demonstration against the Corthan fleet. They learned about the moment when humanity proved that late-arriving species did not have to accept subordinate positions forever. And above the entrance to Earth's Council embassy, a simple plaque displayed 3 words in every galactic language. 3 words that served as both reminder and warning. 3 words that explained how a species with less than a century of spaceflight had reshaped galactic civilization. Don't provoke us. Not a threat. Not a boast. Simply a statement of historical fact. A lesson learned by the predecessors and the Galactic Council. A lesson that every civilization would remember, whenever they looked at humanity's place among the stars, because Earth had proven something fundamental about the nature of power and politics and survival. That the most dangerous opponent is not always the strongest or the oldest or the most technologically advanced. Sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one willing to do whatever it takes to survive. The one who refuses to accept defeat. The one who turns every disadvantage into an opportunity, and every threat into leverage. The predecessors learned that lesson too late. The Galactic Council learned it just in time, and the galaxy would remember long after Marcus Webb was gone. Why humanity had declared those 3 simple words, "Don't provoke us." Because when you provoke humanity, you discover that we have been preparing for that moment since before we even knew you existed. And the price of that provocation is always higher than anyone expects. Retriclod can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.